Today we're going to be going through the essential bar tools that you will need to start mixing cocktails. Now that we have your workhorse spirits kind of squared away, I wanted to go through just the most essential tools. This is probably going to be part 1 of 2, just because there are some other tools that you should probably have, but I just wanted to go through the basics to just get a kit ready for your home bar. Let's get into it. So the very first tool you should procure for your home bar is a shaker. And they come in 2 different styles. You have your Cobbler Shaker, which is a 3-piece shaker. It has this little top. It has a built-in strainer. You shake it, you strain it. It is very good for home use. It's very popular in Japanese bars, but for high volume cocktails or doing things a lot at home with a lot of people, it's just not very practical. Not to mention the expanding and contracting of the metal when it gets cold or when it heats up also makes it a little bit difficult to mess with all the different parts. And so I don't use a Cobbler Shaker very often. The Boston Shaker comes in one of 2 ways. You can either have a glass, which is I think the most recognizable of the Boston Shaker, or you can have a grand and a mini grand tin. The glass has its benefits in that you can see everything that's being shaken in there, but it has a lot of drawbacks, and I don't really like it because of those drawbacks. First, if you use one of these, you want to make sure that the glass is tempered and shatter resistant, because it can break, and even though it's shatter resistant, it can also chip if you slam it too hard into your grand tin. The other thing that I don't like about it is that you don't get a very good seal when it is inside the grand tin, and so when you're shaking, it's a lot heavier. I've had these pop off and fly across the room. I've also hit it a little too hard and chipped glass into my drink, and so for that reason, I just find them to be a little bit more impractical. So the grand and the mini grand tin is what I like to use the best. The mini tin is designed to fit in at an angle and kind of create this little half moon shape that you see right here. You give it like a light whack and it should be locked. That lock is going to prevent it from popping off. Also, when you start shaking with ice, the cold air is going to contract the metal and it's going to vacuum it in as well. And so you get a nice seal. And then when you want to break the seal, you hit it on the side and then take the seal off. And there you go. Easy peasy. Number 2 on my list is a jigger. Now, this is something that you need to have if you want to make consistently good drinks, and then also just consistent drinks. It might be very tempting to free pour all your drinks, but it's a very difficult thing to do, and it takes a lot of training and practice. And not only that, but very seasoned bartenders who free pour have to test themselves weekly to make sure that their pours are consistent, or else it's just a big mess behind the bar. So there are 2 different types of jiggers that I use in front of me, and then this last one is one that you're just gonna see a lot, and I think it bears mentioning, really. So this is a graduated jigger, and it's the one that I use the most. The reason why is because it is very voluminous, and you can basically mix a cocktail in 2 steps. It has everything from ½ an ounce all the way up to 2½ ounces, and then the bottom here is a 3/8 ounce measure that can also be used to pretty accurately get a 1/4 ounce as well. You'll see me do that on Barfly quite a bit. It is also printed with the milliliters, tablespoons, as well as the ounces. And because you can do cocktails in a 2-step pour, for me, especially if you're doing stuff in high volume or if you're trying to do things quickly, this is the best jigger to use. So this next jigger is called an Oxo Jigger. It's not something that I used on Barfly very much, but I used it at Kohl's constantly. I really like it. It also steps up in different ounces on the inside, printed here. The one side, the bigger side, is a 1½ ounce measure at the very top, and then it has 3/4, and then it's the only jigger that I've ever seen printed with 1/3. I think the actual measure is closer to 3/8 of an ounce, but it's really great that you have 3/8 of an ounce measure in there, because 3/8 is half of 3/4. So if you want to split syrups and you want a little bit more than ½ an ounce, or if you want to split citrus, it's really easy to do that. The other side has a 1/4, ½ and 1, so it's pretty multifunctional. It also has this rubber kind of stuff on the middle of it, which is really, really easy to grip. So it makes it a lot easier to keep a hold on. And then, like, if you're working in a bar and your hands are really wet, you won't be dropping this or anything, which is really nice. The only downside to it is that the cups are glued into the middle. So over a lot of wear and tear, these cups can come off and then you've got a broken jigger. So this is called a Japanese style jigger. I wanted to show it to you because it's the most prevalent jigger inside cocktail bars in the US. This is the one that I've seen the most. They probably pick it because it's very elegant and a little bit less workhorsey like this one. Again, this is printed with multiple measures on each side. You have 2 ounces on this side, and then you have a 1½ ounce measure. And then on this side, you have a 1/4, ½ and 1 all the way to the top. It lacks that 1/3 measure like this one has, so not as functional, but you can definitely eye out 3/8 of an ounce if you really needed to here. And this is just like a really good option as well. Of all of these jiggers, they're all very functional and they're all very accurate. So they really, you know, which one you get really depends on like how you're going to be using your jigger, where you're going to be using it, and what you want to use it for. So the next piece of equipment that you're going to need is a mixing glass, and there's one of two ways that you can do this. You can use a pint glass, which is absolutely 100% functional. It's something that I used at Kohl's for many, many, many years. Or you can buy a nice mixing glass, and I think that there are virtues to both. This is cheap. You want to make sure you get a tempered glass so you don't break it and that it's shatter resistant and all that stuff as well. But it's pretty cheap. You can get these for like $4 or $5 at any restaurant supply store. It works very, very well. It works just as well as a official mixing glass, so there's that. So I want to talk about the virtues of using a mixing glass. Now, it is a little bit more functional than, say, a pint glass because it has a pour spout. Is that a huge selling point? I don't really think so. So if we can agree that bartending is about style and about cultivating an experience for people just as much as it is about making great cocktails, then I think that investing in a great mixing glass is definitely the way to go. It is a very beautiful piece of equipment. It's a little bit more functional than your pint glass in that it has a pour spout. It's nice and heavy so that when you're stirring, it doesn't move around the bar like a pint glass could. And it's just a very nice piece of equipment. If you buy one though, there are two different ones. There's ones that have a seam in the glass and there are ones that are seamless. Some people think that when you're stirring the cocktail, the spoon can get caught on the seam and sort of break up your ice or chip your glass. That's never happened to me. Maybe that's a consideration. I just don't like seams. I just don't like the look of it. So I would tell you to definitely get a seamless mixing glass. I will also say though, that you can get mixing glasses in glass or crystal, and both are great. Glass ones can be washed in the dishwasher. I would not put crystal in the dishwasher. A mixing glass is going to be pretty useless without a bar spoon, something to stir your cocktail with. And there are a lot of different types of bar spoons with many different ends on them. Some of them are decorative, some of them are functional. I'm just going to show you two very functional bar spoons that I use. The first one is called a weighted spoon or a teardrop spoon. I think it's also called a Hoffman spoon, which is named after the Hoffman house in New York City, which is an old school bar, 1800s. But the weighted spoon is very functional in that it really, really helps beginners learn how to stir. This is a little weight, a little counterweight. So when you're stirring, and if you're stirring properly and kind of keeping the bowl of the spoon against the sides, right, without too much clinking, none of this, you don't want to be doing any of this. If you're just doing that, you know, kind of smoothly, you got this nice counterweight to sort of help you learn to stir. There was somebody in the comments a little while ago that talked about like, oh, artistry of stirring, haha, how funny. But it actually does take a little bit of practice to learn to stir. It's not something that is very, very difficult to do, but there is a little artistry to it, and this is really gonna help you to that end. It's very, very good for beginners. So this is a measuring spoon and a layering spoon, and it is functional in a couple of different ways. First, the bowl is 1/8 of an ounce or 2.5 milliliters. It's actually somewhere between a dash and a quarter. This one is 1/8 of an ounce. I measured it, and that is a bar spoon measure. Now, you got to make sure that you take different spoons and measure their bowl size because all spoons are different. None of them are going to be exactly the same. It's not a standardized measure like spoon to spoon to spoon. And so you want to make sure that you're using an actual bar spoon measure if you're trying to be accurate. The other side of it is a layering device. So what you would do is you would stick this down there. You would pour liqueurs and liquors of various densities down this spoon, and it will slowly kind of cascade off this top right here. And layer onto a cocktail. And then the other thing that's really good about this is that you can use it as a muddler, which is mainly what I use these little flat bottom spoons for. I don't really use this for layering. I'm not sure how many people actually do that because now we have all sorts of layering devices out there to do that. But it's really, really good for crushing up sugar when I'm making old fashions and Sazeracs. So there you have your two multifunctional bar spoons. So now that you got your mixing glass and your shaker figured out, now we need strainers so that you can strain your beautiful creations into your glasses. So the first strainer that we're gonna go over is called a Hawthorn Strainer. It fits onto a shaker. That's what it's designed to do. It has this nice double coil strain on it. Not all of them are double coil, but this nice Barfly one is a double coil. It fits onto your shaker like so. It has a little tab of metal that you put your finger on. So when you're holding it and you're pouring, you push down on the metal tab. The metal tab contracts the spring and it blocks the ice from coming out. If you just poured like this without what's called closing the gate like that, You would still catch the big pieces, but a lot of the smaller pieces would still get in your cocktail. And then if you do this, in theory, what it's supposed to do is take out all of the fine pieces of ice and have a really nice, clean presentation. So the next strainer that we're going to talk about is called a Julep Strainer. It is called this because back in the day, it was designed to go inside a julep cup to hold back the ice so that you could get all of the last little bits of your drink when you're drinking a mint julep. It has been repurposed in that time to strain cocktails that are stirred in a mixing glass. It fits on like so, or like so, and the basic premise is that it's also holding back the ice so that you can pour it into your glass. So I don't like using this, even though I've used it quite a bit on Barfly, and the reason being that when you're stirring a cocktail, you put a ton of ice. Even if you put a ton of ice into your mixing glass, when you stir it, the ice melts and then it's lower in volume. So unless you put a ton of ice in there, really pack it in, this has nothing to sit on, and then you end up having to sort of balance and hold it like so, which is a little bit difficult to do. A more functional strainer is another style of Hawthorne strainer. I think they call this a vintage Hawthorne strainer, and it has a bigger coil all the way around. This is meant to fit in a mixing glass. Just by virtue of putting it in there and its size, it will automatically sort of contract the springs. It doesn't need to contract the springs very much because we're not shredding ice the way we would if we were shaking. So this is my preferred strainer for mixing glasses. I also promised Marius that I would mention that if you were only going to buy one strainer, you should buy the Hawthorne Strainer, because a Hawthorne Strainer can fit into a cocktail glass and it can fit into a pint glass as well. So if you're just gonna buy one strainer, this guy is the most versatile, and I would get the Hawthorne Strainer. The last strainer that we're going to talk about is a double strainer. Now, as I said, when you close the gate on a Hawthorne strainer and you contract the springs, it's supposed to get all of the little shards of ice out of your drink, but it does not get all the little shards of ice out of your drink. And when we're going into this territory, we really are going into preference territory when it comes to how you like your cocktails to be perceived and how you like to present them. I personally like cocktails that are very, very clean and very elegant. Not a lot going on in there, and so I am going to want to get all of the last little bits of ice out. Now, there are those bartenders which like to have that ice in there. I think it personally dilutes the cocktail a little bit too much. It just adds a little too much water, and then also your wash lines are off because you're adding more volume, so I just don't want it. That said, they definitely will melt inside your cocktail faster and add that water. Some bartenders just say drink your cocktail faster. I personally think that it's just a lot better to just have that nice clean presentation. You are not going to get out of this if you want to have those ice chips in your cocktail anyway, because this is going to save you from all of the stuff that you muddle. So anytime you muddle mint or any type of fruit or any other debris in your cocktail, you're gonna want to double strain it so you have that nice clean presentation and you don't have unwanted floaties in your cocktail. So the last piece of equipment I think is pretty self-explanatory. Marius doesn't think it's self-explanatory. It's called a muddler. And basically what you do with this is muddle fruit. If you don't know what muddling is, it just means to crush things up. Whether it's fruit or herbs or anything that you're putting inside your cocktail that's gonna be solid and you're trying to extract the flavor and juices from it, then you would put it in and crush it up. And this is one of the reasons why you're gonna need a fine strainer when you're making cocktails. Although there's really not much to be said about a muddler, I do wanna talk a little bit about the materials that muddlers are made out of, okay, because they are quite important. If you buy a wooden muddler, many wooden muddlers will come with some type of clear coat on it, and you're gonna wanna strip that clear coat off, because if you don't, it's going to get inside your cocktails. Over time, the alcohol is going to wear that clear coat off and it's going to go inside your cocktails. To avoid that, strip it down to the wood and then you use a board cream to condition the wood so that it doesn't dry out and crack. So other good options for muddlers are ones that are made out of resin or made out of plastic. These are very good options because you don't have to worry about wood. It's not very high maintenance. You can just wash them and forget about them. I would just make sure that whatever company you're buying from uses food grade materials for those muddlers. So there it is, guys, your essential bar tools. Now that you have all of the knowledge to go out and buy all your bar tools, you'll be able to mix up some drinks for the whole family. And then you can tell them who taught you how to make those wonderful drinks. Big Papa taught you how to make those drinks.